Hello, tropical fish keepers. Welcome to Aqua Alex Live, right here on my YouTube channel, the legendary Alex Cardinale. I'm your host, South American fish keeper and monster fish hobbyist, Aqua Alex Cardinale. I finally figured out a way where I could record in front of my 125-gallon aquarium. It's still not the best way to record. As you can see, my aquarium light is still making the video a little bit blurry, but hey, it's going to work for now. I think it looks fantastic. As a matter of fact, you can see some of my severums in the background. You're probably going to see my flagtail procholotus in the background. You might see my silver dollars and peacock bass, etc. So today we're going to have a exciting fish topic. I'm going to talk about a South American catfish species from the Amazon River. This is a South American catfish genus that has over 150 species. That's right, there are over 150 species in this catfish genus. Many of the species in this genus are known as herbivores and algae eaters. A lot of people have nicknames for them in the aquarium hobby. They call them the sucker fish because they will suck on driftwood and algae in the home aquarium. But then there are plecos that aren't so herbivorous and won't eat so much algae. There are plecos like the Panaques and the Royal Plecos that need driftwood in their diet, and they will eat pieces of driftwood and they need it in their diet. And then there's my favorite kind of plecos. There's the plecos that are more omnivorous, meaning that they'll eat both meat and vegetable. And those plecos could be things like the vampire pleco, they could be the cactus pleco, etc. So plecos, I know what they are, I know what they're all about, but they're a species of fish that I've never really specialized in. Sure, I may have had some in my aquarium from time to time, but I never really studied them or researched about them or learned much about them. You know, I'm really well known that I know my silver dollars like the Mylius, the Mylosoma, the Mentinus, and even the Pacu. I know about South American cichlids like Oscars and Severums and chocolate cichlids. I know about some of the South American monster fish, but plecos are another story. I've kept them, but I never really researched them and I never studied them like other fish keepers that I know do. I have a friend, it's actually a family friend. He's a friend of my dad for so many years. He actually was a local fish store employee when my dad was growing up. His name is Pleco Dave, and he's from Western Massachusetts. His specialty is plecos of all kinds. He specializes in plecos and he loves his plecos. And a lot of what I know about plecos and what my dad knows about plecos came from Pleco Dave. It is my goal one day to hopefully have a sit down interview with Pleco Dave and get him to educate us all about plecos. So recently, I got a Royal Pleco. It actually came with this aquarium. The guy I bought this aquarium from was like, "Here, have a Royal Pleco. It'll give you good luck." So I ended up getting him, and I actually have a piece of driftwood that he can nibble on, as well as the vegetables that I give to the flagtails and the algae wafers that I have for my common pleco. So getting that Royal Pleco for free really jump started my interest in getting into fancy plecos again. I really only kept fancy plecos once in my fish keeping career, and that was around 2018. And in 2018, I had a couple of green phantoms. I had a vampire pleco. I had a L I forgot the name of it, but it's the L number of it, but it's a red tail leopard cactus pleco or sternella pleco. I forgot the L numbers of so many of these plecos, but I know their common names, so we're going to talk about their common names and everything you need to know about these plecos. So one thing you should know heading into today's video is that there are over 150 species of pleco out in the wild in South America, and many of them are now just being brought into the aquarium hobby. And with there being so many species of plecos, that's why they have L numbers and they don't really have scientific names or common names like that. So on today's video, I'm going to talk about what I enjoy about plecos, what I like about plecos. I'll talk about plecos that I have owned in the past. I'll talk about plecos that are my favorite. And my main event subject for today's video is the dream plecos that I want to keep. So think of this video as like a introductory series to plecos because I may end up doing an entire series on plecos because there's so many of them. They're all gorgeous fish, and I'll probably do some species profiles on plecos. I'll interview some pleco experts, etc. I think I'm going to have a great time talking about plecos. And I'm going to show some images of plecos today. First, I'll show images of plecos that I had kept in the past, and then we'll get into some of the plecos that I want to own here in the future. So if anyone is watching live or if you're watching the replay of today's video, I would appreciate your feedback. I would like to know, what are the dream plecos that you one day want to own in your home aquarium? Let me know in the comments. And what fancy plecos should I own? Let me know in the comments as well. What do you like about plecos? And if you have any questions on plecos, post them in the comments and I will definitely make sure that I answer your pleco questions. With that being said, let's go ahead and get this show started. I want to start today's show by talking about what I like about plecos. Now, when people talk about plecos, one of the coolest things about them is that they're a very unorthodox and unique fish in terms of overall appearance. So they have a weird body shape, and when you factor in the look of their mouth, that adds to the mystique of plecos. Plecos look like a sea lamprey, or whatever that fish is called. I think it's called the lamprey. Plecos have that look, like they can actually suck blood and do damage, but they're mostly herbivorous, so they eat algae and vegetables. I like that mouth look on a pleco. I like that they have a cool mouth feature and they're peaceful. And I like the fact that there are so many different species of plecos out there. As I mentioned earlier, the number right now is over 150 plecos that are available in the aquarium hobby right now. And there's probably many more that are out in the wild to be discovered. So what I like most about plecos is the variety. You've got your common algae-eating plecos, then you've got the more common plecos, but a little bit on the more unique, fancier side, like the marble sealfin gibbosep pleco or the rhino pleco. Then you start getting into your fancier plecos, which we're going to talk about, that have specialized diets and things like that. So really what I enjoy the most about plecos is you've got plecos that are on a different care range. You've got your beginner-friendly plecos that can eat just about anything and do well in an aquarium. Then you've got plecos that work their way up to being difficult to keep in the aquarium hobby. And there's a whole price range of plecos. Some are as cheap as $5 for a 2-inch fish, and then there are some that could be $500 for a 2-inch fish. You definitely don't know the price of a pleco. It all depends on the seasonality of that fish, if it's tank bred, etc. Shout out to my friend Steve Aquatics, who's in the house. And Steve has talked about some of his favorite plecos. He says his favorite are Cactus Pleco, Green Phantom, Blue Phantom, Gold Nugget, and Leopard Frog Plecos. Those are all awesome plecos. And two of the pleco species that you mentioned, I have kept. And we'll find out which two plecos that you mentioned I have kept in a few. Oh, actually, three of those pleco species that you mentioned I have kept, and I'll talk about those in just a second. Plecos, very cool fish, and they all range in dietary needs. That's the last thing I like about plecos. They all have different dietary needs. Some will need herbivorous foods and algae, and as they grow up, their diet shifts, like the common pleco. And then there are some that are more omnivorous, like the vampire pleco, that will need meaty foods like pellets and shrimp, and they'll also pick on some of the herbivorous foods. And then you've got plecos like the Royal Panaques that need driftwood in their diet, which is pretty cool. One of the downsides, though, of plecos is that you're going to need superb filtration because they produce a shit ton of waste. Catch the pun there. They shit a lot and they produce a lot of waste. I know when I grew out a lot of common plecos, that was like a huge disadvantage to me. While I enjoyed the look of common plecos, every time I had to do a water change and siphon out turds, I grew frustrated and eventually I just rehomed the common pleco for free because I felt for how much waste they produced. They were a waste of space in the aquarium hobby. So in my aquarium, I just gave them away. But now that I have a Fluval FX4 and the 3 Aquarium filters, and I do water changes twice a week, really, the Pleco can produce as much waste as it wants. It's not going to destroy my water parameters like it would if I had them in my 75-gallon still. So those are why I like Plecos. Very interesting and unique looking fish. So let's talk about the Pleco species that I have owned. And I may forget a couple, I may forget a lot. I'm actually going to be doing this off the top of my head. So I'm not using a script or an outline or anything like that. Most of the shows that I do on YouTube are all ad-libbed and they're done live. So I may miss a couple, I may miss a lot, but here are the Pleco species that I have owned over the last, let's say, 16 or 17 years. And I've actually got a couple of pictures that I am going to show you. I'll start with the common Pleco. I think over the last 15, 16 years, I've had to have at least a dozen common Plecos. Um, One of the reasons I enjoy the common plecos so much is that they are really easy to keep. They can live in just about any water parameters. I've had fish keepers tell me, oh, a common pleco can live in sewer water, and they'll be just fine. They can live with goldfish, they'll be just fine. They're a very hardy fish, and they're hard to kill. I have never, ever seen a common pleco die. I've seen common plecos in ick-filled aquariums at PetSmart and Pleco, and they were doing just fine. They had no sickness whatsoever. And I think that's what attracts people to the common Pleco is that not only are they really hardy, but they can withstand just about anything. And they can even live with predatory fish with teeth like piranha and wolfish, etc. So the common pleco would have to be hands down the most kept pleco by me over the last, let's say, 15, 16 years. I've grown some out to monstrous proportions. I bought some at 2 inches and raised them to about 12 to 13 inches, 14 inches even. And then I bought some monster ones. I had an 18-inch one given to me way back in the day when I was sharing a monster tank with my dad. My friend Charlie brought over a 2-foot common pleco, and I took him in and kept him for a while until I brought him into the fish store because I got tired of his massive turds. But they are a pretty interesting species. And then there was a period where I never wanted to see a common pleco again, and that lasted for a couple of years. But then when I got back into Oscars, I always thought that common plecos and Oscars they go well together, and they usually look good together because they both come from South America. So common plecos are a pretty interesting species, if you ask me. So I did have a picture of one of the common plecos that I raised that actually won a photo of the month on a tropical fish forum many, many years ago. And here it is. So this is what common plecos look like. And again, there's a plethora of different types of common plecos out there, but generally they're all in the, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this scientific name right, so if I sound like a complete fool, it's okay for you guys to laugh. I'll laugh at myself as well. I want to say Hypostomus family, something like that. It starts with an H. Those are where all the common plecos come from. And then there's some specialty common algae-eating plecos out there that I like the gibbosepps and the rhino plecos. Those would be my first choice for an algae-eating pleco. I would go with the sailfin pleco or the rhino pleco first, not only because they look better than the common pleco, but they stay a little bit smaller and their diet is a little bit more forgiving because not only will they eat algae and vegetables, they can be weaned onto proteins like chopped up market shrimp and tilapia that I feed to my predatory fish as well. And that's not to say that the common pleco can't do that. I actually have a common pleco right now that is used to taking shrimp and tilapia. And as common plecos grow, their diet does change. A lot of people think that common plecos are used to algae their entire life. That is not true because as this pleco grows, its taste for algae goes away, and they're going to need to provide herbivorous food like sinking pellets and cucumbers and vegetables, and then they'll also take meat as well. But they are a very, very gorgeous fish. Another pleco that I've kept over the years, I actually don't have an image of, at least I couldn't find one on Facebook or my Photo Bucket account. That's how old I am. Bucket was a thing. Now we have Instagram. I've had plenty of marble sailfin plecos, which are known as gibbosepps. I've had rhino plecos, which are also another type of algae-eating suckerfish. And then I've had albino chocolate gibbosep plecos. So those would be the common pleco species that I have kept. One thing I will say is anytime I see people going to Petco and PetSmart calling these fish sucker fish, I just get a real good laugh out of it because I find it kind of hysterical. We wouldn't call a woman a sucker human. It's just weird hearing people calling a fish a sucker fish or a blowfish or anything like that, if you catch my drift. Um, but in reality, these fish, they do suck on algae on the glass, but as they mature, they're definitely going to need something in their diet. So I actually did not start keeping fancy plecos until 2015, 2016. It was then that I got my very first Royal Pleco, and it was from Jeff Rapps, who is now retired, and it was a L191 Royal Panaques. The L191 is actually known as the dual-eyed Royal Pleco, and I wasn't really a good photographer at the time, so this picture isn't really good, but here's a picture of my first ever fancy Pleco. And as you can see, he was in my predatory aquarium, and he had a piece of Malaysian driftwood that he ate. But he also ate spinach, cucumber, and whatever vegetables I threw in there for my maintenance. And I think there were some tinfoil barbs in there, and I forgot what else was in there. But as you can see, the L191 dual-eyed green Royal Pleco is a very beautiful fish. It looks like a little leprechaun, and we're getting really close to St. Patrick's Day. So this is a fish that would be perfect to talk about next Thursday on my St. Patrick's Day bash, which is going to have an appearance by me, and we'll talk about that later on. But this was my first Royal Pleco and my first fancy Pleco, as they call them. And as I was ordering from Jeff Rapps at the time, I believed I picked up some datnoids and a couple other things. He told me if I added another fish, it had to be like in the 6 to 7 inch range. It would have saved money on shipping. And I went to his Pleco list and I saw all the available Plecos that he had. I was originally thinking about getting a couple of Colombian zebras, but I saw the Royal Pleco and I've always wanted one. So I took the opportunity to pick up one, and I was glad that I did. This Pleco actually grew to about 14 inches until I lost him a couple years later in the winter snowstorm. And in New England, when we have winter snowstorms and we lose power, where I was living at least, power would not be restored until a day or two later, sometimes 3 days, sometimes even a week. So I would lose fish very frequently in New England, which is why I'm glad I left and came to Florida. And I have never, ever, knock on wood, to this day, since I've been here since 2019, I have never, ever lost power here in Florida. So I think it is a rarity that anyone loses power in Florida. But anyway, that Pleco was my first fancy Pleco and my first Royal Pleco. And then a couple years after that, I picked up a watermelon Royal Pleco. And this one is actually a stunner. I don't know where I got him from, or I don't even remember getting him, but I just remember I had him. And it was when I was keeping discus in my 120-gallon aquarium that I had a couple years ago. And he did great. He ate driftwood, he ate vegetables, and whatever I threw in the tank, he eventually ate as well. Very, very nice fish. And here's a little bit of a better picture of him, a more up-close image. Very, very cool. And then around that time, I started looking into plecos a little bit more, and I found out about the green phantom and the blue phantom. It was a couple of months, but I was finally able to acquire a blue phantom pleco, and there were two of them at the time, and I believe they were like $70. So it was like 2016, so I had to be late teenage years, and I wasn't working at the time, so I had like 70 cash, and I had to ask my mom for another 70 so I could buy both of them, but eventually I did, and this is the only picture that I found. I think Facebook is like deleting they're deleting pictures that are over 10 years old for some reason. I think it's anywhere from 5 to 10 years now. I know they started doing that in December, and I went and looked on my photo archive, and a lot of the images that I put on Facebook from like 2012 to 2019 have disappeared. I know that I did not delete them, so I think Facebook is like deleting the photos that don't have that many likes or comments or aren't being viewed for God knows what reason. I don't agree with it, so I know a lot of other Facebook users are probably not going to agree with it as well. But this is the one photo that I was able to download that's left of the blue phantom pleco that I had, the pair that I had. And as you can see, it's in a tank with severums and chocolate cichlids. So fast forward a couple months later, I found my first green phantom pleco. And unfortunately, I did not know that the phantom plecos, when they come in from the wild, they're usually riddled with parasites, and they're very thin and emaciated. And I thought that I could trust my fish store, and I thought that they would quarantine their plecos. But I found out the hard way a couple days after I got this fish. I noticed his belly was very thin. He was very emaciated, not very active. So I went out and bought a bottle of Prozi Pro, and I poured it in the aquarium. I put the right amount of dosage, and then he started coming around a bit. He started eating cucumbers, and then like a few days later, he passed away. And I talked to my dad's friend that is pretty knowledgeable in plecos, and he said that the parasites inside the fish were probably getting all the nutrients from the food, and the pleco himself wasn't actually eating; it was the parasites. And unfortunately, the green phantom pleco, the very first one that I got, which is actually pictured here, he perished because it was probably a recent imported species that was collected from the wild. Very, very sad. But this is another picture of him. And this is another picture that won me Tank of the Month on, or excuse me, Fish of the Month or Photo of the Month on a fish forum. And by the way, if you ever win Photo of the Month on a fish forum, you really don't win anything except for bragging rights. So I just thought I'd throw that out there in case you're wondering. But very, very gorgeous fish. And I was devastated because I think I paid like $90 for this green phantom pleco, and it was just freshly imported, not even quarantined by the fish store. So I was very cautious about getting green phantom plecos again. But then I started doing research for a couple of years, and I found out that there are actually captive bred and tank raised green phantom plecos out there. And I found my first one from Wet Spot Tropical Fish. And I did like a whole pleco order from them. I got like 2 or 3 of their juvenile green phantoms, a couple juvenile blue phantoms. I got my very first L114 red fin sternella cactus pleco and a vampire pleco. But the only image that I have found that I can remember is this one. This is from 2018, and it only shows 2 of those plecos that I mentioned. The pleco right next to the Pictus catfish is the L114 redfin cactus sternella pleco, and then the one below that is the L200 green phantom pleco. These guys did well, actually. The redfin sternella pleco, he ate everything from pellets to protein and even algae wafers. And the green phantom, he was more of a very stubborn eater and a stubborn, picky pleco because he'd only take algae wafers, and that was it. I could not get him to eat cucumber. I could not get him to take any of the other food that was in there. While the other green phantom, remember I ordered 2, he perished as soon as I got him. He came dead on arrival. So that was kind of a bummer. But the first one, the first bag that I picked up was alive and well, and he lived a good life. I think he's still alive today. I actually gave him to a friend of mine in Massachusetts. He has all the plecos, actually. He's got that green phantom. He's got the sternella. He's got the vampire and the blue phantom. So they're probably all still alive in his 75-gallon, I bet. Um, and in that tank, he's got like tetras and angelfish and things like that. All fish that I like, but they weren't my cup of tea at the time. And the reason I ended up rehoming the Plecos at the time was that they were shit machines. They constantly produced waste every 5 minutes, and it made my water cloudy and murky. There's no matter how many water changes I did, these plecos would pollute the water with their waste. But now that I have my first canister filter and a very large aquarium, I think I can combat that. Very, very cool fish. The thing about plecos, though, is that they're a fish that eats a lot, just like goldfish, and they're going to produce a lot of waste. So you have to be prepared for that. So those are the plecos that I have owned over the last number of years in my fish keeping hobby. Let's talk about my favorite plecos. And there's a lot of plecos that I could consider favorites of mine, but let's get right into my favorite plecos. Well, my first favorite pleco is the green phantom pleco. This pleco looks like Kermit the Frog. It has the Kermit the Frog appearance, and it's a beautiful fish that is perfect for St. Patrick's Day. I also like the blue phantom pleco, which is a different species. My next favorite pleco would be the vampire pleco. A nice black fish with white spots, kind of resembles a zebra. Very, very cool. Another vampire pleco. This one has different spots, and there's a couple of different variations of the vampire pleco out there. The L114 redfin sternella cactus pleco, another favorite pleco of mine, and I definitely want to get one again. The marble sailfin pleco, known as the Gibiceps pleco, another pleco that I have a lot of admiration and respect for, and one of my personal favorites. And they get pretty big. They get to 2 feet, but unlike the common pleco, these guys are not going to get 3.5 feet. They'll max out at around 24 inches. And lastly, the rhino pleco, another favorite pleco of mine, is also known as the alligator pleco. It looks more like an alligator than it does a rhino, in my personal opinion. All right, so now it's time for our main event, and now I want to talk about my dream plecos that I want to keep. And like I said, I've been in the aquarium hobby for about 16 years, give or take, and I've only kept plecos at most 4 years. So I have a lot of pleco species that I need to catch up on and learn, and there's so many of them that I want to keep. The first dream pleco of mine, I forgot to get an image to post up, but that's okay. It is the blue-eyed Panaque pleco. And even when I was young, that pleco was fetching a lot of money. I remember one of my fish store employees that I became friends with. His name is Ed Picard, and he owns Fish Frenzy down in Western Massachusetts. And I was asking him about the blue-eyed pleco when I was living in Massachusetts a number of years ago, and he told me that like in the 90s they were getting a high price tag. He was like, back in the 90s they were starting out at around $150 to $200, and their price continued to escalate, and now it's like $300 to $400, sometimes even $500 to get your hands on a blue-eyed Panaque. And I think the reason for that is they're all wild caught, and they come from a specific region from South America, but I could be wrong about that. One of the reasons I have not owned a blue-eyed Panaque pleco is because I don't see myself shelling out $300, $400, $500 just on one fish, especially a fish like a pleco, where you're never guaranteed if it's going to eat or not. So with fish like plecos, especially the expensive ones, I tend to wait a while. I'll ask the employee to show the Pleco eating before I even think about buying it, just so that I don't buy it and then I bring it home. I acclimate it to my aquarium. I own it for a couple of weeks. It never eats and then it perishes. That would be a waste of money. So when I'm buying expensive fish, I always like to make sure that they're eating, and the same goes for Plecos. Besides, blue-eyed Panaque Plecos, when they're available to me, it's usually when they're about 10 to 11 inches in length, and that only increases their price. So we're talking maybe $500-$600 for a Pleco. My next dream Pleco is another species of Panaque. It's actually a Royal Panaque. And I've owned a couple species of Royals. I've had the Watermelon Royal. I've had the L191 dual-eyed Royal. And right now I've got the L190 regular Royal. But this one is known as the Platinum Royal, and it's L27. If I'm not mistaken, it comes from Xingu and a couple other regions like the Rio Tocantins and Brazil. It's really nice. It's got like a gold platinum color, very, very beautiful. One of the most stunning fish from South America, hands down, would be any of the fancy plecos. They are all absolutely stunning. The next dream pleco that I would like to keep would be another Panaque, and it would be similar to the L191 dual-eyed. It looks exactly the same almost, but it's known as the L418 Royal, and here it is. So it does have similar appearances to the dual-eyed Royal. It just has, I think the difference is thinner black lines and yellow on the tail. The L191 juveniles will have the yellow on the tail, but I think the L418 will have darker yellow on the tail. But this image really doesn't do that justice. You can't really see the yellow, but it's there. Very, very beautiful Panaque Pleco. So moving along, my next dream Plecos are actually carnivores. The next three plecos that I'm going to talk about are known as the carnivorous plecos, and they'll eat your leftover protein if you got a tank of predators, and they grow pretty big, which is cool, so you can keep them with your monster fish. So I think the next one I'm showing you is actually a L25. So this would be the L25 pleco, or redfin cactus pleco. Very, very gorgeous fish. That is a stunner, and that is actually a show-stopping fish. Very, very cool. The L24, another gorgeous pleco. Very, very beautiful. That one is actually gorgeous as well. And then there is the three beacon pleco. It looks like a common pleco, but it's got like the orange on the fins and it's more colorful. Very, very cool. And the last pleco for today's video, because I am going to be doing a multi-series on plecos. So next week or in a few weeks, I'll do part 2 of the dream plecos that I want to own. This one is known as the Flash Pleco. I'm not even going to guess the L number on this one. I'll definitely be wrong. But the Flash Pleco, very, very gorgeous. Very stunning fish. I think they're in the Panaque family. So that means that they're going to eat things like driftwood and herbivorous foods as well. All right, this was a really fun Wednesday evening episode of Aqua Alex Live. I certainly had a blast talking about plecos. So I'm going to go back to my live comments and answer all of your comments. So let's see. Steve says, you could do a different Pleco of the Week show. There are so many. That is right. You're right about that, Steve. I definitely would love to do more live streams on Plecos, and that is definitely in my plans. So in a couple of weeks from here on out, there will be at least one Pleco live stream a week. And when I start working and I start getting on my feet, I'm actually going to be getting hired at the Palm Beach Zoo in a couple of weeks, I'll be able to buy Plecos and use up the aquarium that's to the left of me that is unused right now. So I think that tank will be like my Pleco quarantine tank before I move them into my larger aquarium. And I agree with you, Steve. The watermelon Pleco is absolutely gorgeous. Very, very nice. And Steve also says, zebra Pleco, expensive but beautiful. Yes, I actually almost kept zebra Plecos one time, but they were like a quarter of an inch and they were going for like $125. So I was like, nah, I'm not going to pay that for a quarter of an inch fish that I would barely be able to see unless I put on some microscopes. But the reason that zebra Plecos, from my knowledge, are so expensive is that from the wild, they're only collected from Brazil and they're actually on the illegal to import list. So you can no longer import zebra plecos from Brazil anymore. And there's a couple other pleco species that you can no longer import into the United States of America as well. I think there's a species of gold nugget that is no longer allowed to be imported. But I could be wrong about that. I remember talking to my fish store owner here in Florida, and I was like, "Can you?" One of my friends wanted a gold phantom, or excuse me, a gold nugget pleco, and he's like, "Well, I can't bring them in anymore because they come from Brazil, and they're them along with the zebras are really hard to get." But luckily, there are some captive raised, tank raised zebra pleco out there that are good. There are captive raised and farm bred zebras and gold nuggets that are cheap as well. I think the cheapest farm bred, captive raised zebra pleco out there is probably around 150 compared to a wild caught you'd be spending about $300 or $400 for. So that's very, very good. We've got a new viewer in the house, Crypt Keeper Aquatics. Hey, how are you doing? Welcome to the Fish Fam, and thank you so much for taking the time to join my live stream. I really appreciate that. That means a lot to me, and as you're going to find out, all my viewers are like my personal friends. I love each and every one of you, so thank you so much for being here. And sorry I'm late. No worries. No worries whatsoever. You being here at any time, at any point in my video, means a lot to me. So thank you very much for that. I really, really do appreciate it. I've got a rubber lip pleco, very cool pleco, and a clown pleco. What other small types can you recommend? Let's see. Definitely the flash pleco would be a good one. I think they only grow to like 4 to 6 inches. Bristlenose plecos are good. I personally love bristlenose, but the problem with them is that they probably would get eaten in my big tank, and I don't have any other aquariums that are set up at the moment, except for the tank that's over there. I'd have to set that up and cycle it. Let's see. It depends on how small you're looking. If I probably would say like the green phantom and the blue phantoms, but they can get up to 6 inches. But then again, that's not really big for a pleco. Let's see, what else is out there? The gold nuggets are good. The good thing about the fancy plecos is that a lot of them stay small, but they are pricey. That's the only thing that a lot that differs like beginners from them is that they cost a lot. What else is out there? I'm pretty sure there's a lot of species that I forgot to mention today, but that's okay because I'm going to do a part 2 and a part 3 of this topic, and then we'll get into like some of the different individual species, and I'll talk about keeping and caring for them in the home aquarium, at least the ones that I raised. The gold nuggets are nice too. I think there's a pleco that's like the rubber lip out there, but I think it grows big. I think it's called the Medusa pleco. I'm not sure how big that one gets, but I think there's one that's awesome. All right. So Steve says there's nothing like keeping a rare pleco and having them breed and see 5 or 50 babies crawl out of their cave. Money, 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 money. Yes, that is right. That's true. There's people out there that actually breed zebra plecos and some of the other fancier types. I don't know any of them personally, but I've seen a couple of YouTubers that breed zebras, and they make a ton of money. Um, I've only had a couple of species of fish breed for me, and one was koi angels. So you really can't make any money off of koi angels because they're everywhere. And the only other fish, believe it or not, that bred for me were some Mentinus argentis silver dollars, but their eggs got eaten by like the red hooks that were in there. So that really wasn't really a successful breeding. But that's it. I've always wanted to breed some of the exotic species. Like my dream would be to breed flagtail procelotus or black bar silver dollars, something that on the market would have a lot of value. Because to this day there are no captive bred or tank raised flagtail procelotus or semi-procelotus. All the flagtails that come into the aquarium hobby are taken from the wild and they're imported here. And there are so many flagtails in the wild that by importing them into the aquarium hobby, it's not hurting their population. I mean, there's literally millions and billions of flagtails out there. They breed like rabbits in the South American waters, but for whatever reason, they just don't reproduce in the home aquarium, which is kind of sad, but also a good thing because then we get to see their natural wild behaviors in the aquarium. If you start taking species of fish that only come from the wild and start breeding them in captivity, they're going to lose some of their natural instincts and they're going to gain like the living in a box kind of instincts. But a lot of people are on the fence about that. All right, so Crypt Keeper says, looking for something suitable for a 55 gallon, but can have multiples of it in there. So yeah, definitely a green phantom would be suitable for a 55 gallon in my opinion. A blue phantom would be as well. You could do like some of the fancier bristle nose. They've got albino bristle nose. There's dragonfin bristle nose or bushy nose, whatever you want to call it. I used to have a friend that used to, what's the word? That used to heckle me about the way I pronounced bristle nose or bushy nose. Um, you guys might know him as William T. He used to heckle the shit out of me about how I pronounced bushy nose plecos. Like 10 minutes before I did a show on them, he would like tell me, "Oh, you got to pronounce it right, or I'm not going to have you on my podcast anymore." I was like, "Okay, whatever. It's only a fish, but if you're going to be that way, then I'll try to pronounce it right." But anyway, bristle nose or bushy nose plecos would be great for a 55 gallon. Um, the flash pleco, like I mentioned, those are all some good ideas for plecos for a 55 gallon aquarium. And like I said, I'm not an expert on plecos by any means. I just happen to enjoy them, and for some reason, over the last couple of weeks, um, I've had this pleco bug, and I think it's fortunate that I don't have money to go buy them right now because if I did, I'd probably buy a whole bunch. But luckily, I'm unemployed, so I have time to research which plecos I want to get. So Steve says long fin green plecos are easy to breed and worth some money. Yes, that's true. There are some variants of the bushy nose pleco that are catching a lot of money. My local fish store has like a 220 gallon display, and they've got some predators in there, peacock bass, datnoids, and somehow they have a breeding colony of albino bushy nose plecos in there. I think the male is like 6.5 inches, and the female is about 4. And there's like a plethora of 2.5 inch plecos in there. And somehow the peacock bass or the datnoids haven't finished them off or picked them off one by one. I think it's because these fish jam themselves in rocks that they're able to get away from the predators. So that is interesting. Alrighty, so before I end today's video, I'm going to leave a question for all the viewers, whether you're watching this video live or you're catching the replay of today's video. Which Pleco would you recommend that I get for either of my aquariums? My 6-foot aquarium that's already set up and has some severums, a couple of wolffish, silver dollars, and other stuff in it, or for my, I think it's a 55-gallon over here that I'm going to be setting up soon. Which Plecos do you recommend that I get? Leave it in the comments, and I'll be glad to hear your reactions. What a great video today. Time flew by. Every time I have fun, it seems like time flies by, and I definitely enjoy doing these episodes of Aqua Alex Live. All right, so I'm looking forward to my next Fish Keepers Q&A, where I'll answer any of your tropical fish keeping questions. The next question and answer is going to air Saturday, March 26th, 2022 at 10 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. So make sure you email your fish keeping questions to alexgoyankeescardinale19@gmail.com. I'll answer all your fish keeping questions. Also, I'm continuing my new segment of Fish Keeper Show Off, where I show off all of the Fish Keepers aquariums and fish. All you got to do is send me a video. It could be a YouTube video or a recently taken video or images of your fish and your aquarium, and I will show them off. You can send those videos and images along with your questions to alexgoyankeescardinale19@gmail.com, and I cannot wait to show them off. And in the next couple of days or next couple of weeks, I'm going to announce my very first sponsor for Aqua Alex Live. I'm going to be partnering with an amazing tropical fish supply company. They have amazing driftwood, Pleco caves, and tropical fish food. They specialize in rapashi, and rapashi makes a food that is great for Royal Plecos and other Panaques called morningwood. And I'm going to be happy to promote the shit out of that here on my YouTube channel. All right, fish keepers, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video. I certainly hope that you enjoyed my speech on Plecos. I hope you get ready for more speeches on Plecos, because like I said, it's going to be a 2 or 3 part series. Then moving forward, I'm going to do a Pleco show weekly as well. Talk about a different species of Pleco each week. So enjoy the aquarium hobby, feed some high quality fish food, and do plenty of water changes, and have a great one. I will see you on the next episode of Aqua Alex Live. Thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe to my channel if you are a new viewer, and smash that like button. Good night, everybody. Hey fish keepers, Aqua Alex Cardinale here, inviting you to the best fish keeping video of March 2022. I'm inviting you to be a part of my 8th Fish Keepers Q&A. Come be a part of March 2022's Ask Aqua Alex Live, where you can ask me any fish keeping questions you have, whether they are freshwater or saltwater. I will answer all of your questions. As a matter of fact, I find it personally rewarding and satisfying to be able to answer your tropical fish keeping questions. I like a good challenge, so ask me any fish keeping questions you can think of, and I will answer them on the March 2022 Fish Keepers Q&A. Email your tropical fish keeping questions questions to Alex Cardinale 19@gmail.com. I will answer all aquarium-related questions, whether they are freshwater or saltwater. So get them sent in right now. The Fish Keepers Q&A is going to air live Saturday, March 26, 2022 at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. So please try and get your questions in by March 25th. Also, last month we debuted a segment where I react to other fish keepers' tropical fish photos and videos of your aquarium. We are going to continue that amazing trend. So, send photos and videos of your aquarium and tropical fish to Alex Cardinale19@gmail.com. I'd love to show off your fish and your aquarium. Trust me, I know you're thinking towards it, and my viewers would love to see your fish and your aquarium. So send those videos and photos to Alex Cardinale19@gmail.com and try to get those in by March 25th. And last but not least, the topics I'm going to cover on the March 2022 edition of Ask Aqua Alex Live include fish species I don't see myself keeping, and for the first time ever, I will talk about aquatic reptiles and aquatic amphibians I want to keep. Believe it or not, I can see myself keeping African clawed frogs and axolotls as examples. This is going to be a fun fish keeping episode. Mark your calendars. It all goes down live Saturday, March 26, 2022, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. You can email your questions, alexcardinale19@gmail.com, and also submit photos and videos of your aquarium to alexcardinale19@gmail.com as well. I'll see you on Ask Aqua Alex Live, March 2022, on Saturday, March 26th.